Welcome in. The waters are warm here. This is Big Ten Today. I'm Anthony Herron alongside my guy, Trent Meacham. There is so much to get into with you here over the next hour. As I mentioned, Fran McCaffery will join us in just a few short minutes. There are 3 games in Big Ten men's basketball tonight that we'll break down in a moment. And, of course, there is so much to talk about with that championship race in women's hoops as well. And Trent, it feels like to me at this point in the season where squads are now, we're not quite halfway through the conference slate, but we're deep enough into it where teams are starting to figure each other out. Do you get that sense?
For sure. We're in the guts of the season now. The weather is awful here in Big Ten country, but this is when teams separate themselves. This is when players start to emerge and really make an impact that maybe we didn't see have that impact earlier in the year. This is where you gain ground in the race. This is where you can make separation or lose yourself as a team. So these next few weeks will be telling for this Big Ten race.
That nicely sets up our big story, which is going to involve the triple header that we do have in Big Ten men's basketball tonight. Wisconsin and Minnesota, when they meet up, it is always close between Bucky and Goldie. Greg Gard 11-2 against Minnesota in his time in Madtown. 3-game skid for the Gophers, so they got some things to figure out. But Chris Holtmann has certainly figured things out in his backcourt, and part of that has been because they've gone more to an inside approach. They've got the hot-shooting Nebraska Cornhuskers. And then, of course, facing Purdue, always a challenge. We know Michigan will have their hands full against the Boilermakers, who have shown themselves as perhaps the most versatile team in the entire country. That's a big part of why we've seen so many squads in the Big Ten have success at home so far this season. An .837 win percentage so far this year. That's the highest we've seen in a handful of seasons here, where the Big Ten, as deep as the conference always is, it's proven really, really difficult to be able to win on the road. And I'm wondering, Trent, do you think there's a squad or squads that can try to find a way to break through? Because anyone who's going to try to chase down the Boilermakers will have to find a way to win road games.
Yeah, I would look to the teams at the top, Purdue, Illinois, Wisconsin. But even we've seen early on, Purdue drop 2 road games to Northwestern, to Nebraska. We saw Illinois drop a home game to Maryland. And these are not the top teams in the league. You know, so some teams have gotten it done. But it's just tough. You go on the road. Basketball's such an emotional game. It's a field game. Many of these teams did not face true road environments early in the season in non-conference. Maybe they play neutral site games or tournament games. So it's tough to win on the road. We saw a few kind of like blips of like how this happened, but there have not been, too many so far this season. So, who can maybe separate themselves? They're going to have to get some wins on the road.
It's a top 15 Wisconsin Badger squad that's going to travel to Williams Arena tonight to face Minnesota. And with that game in particular, because it's always really close, 5 out of the last 6 meetings have come down to 6 points or less in the end. I'm wondering from the Badgers' perspective, when you look at the way Wisconsin has played, especially on offense, is there a versatility to Wisconsin, even though we don't see them as one of the hottest shooting teams or the biggest tempo teams in the country? But this offense feels to me like one of the best we've seen Greg Gard have.
There's no doubt. They still don't play so fast, but they're the 5th most efficient offense in the country. And I would give credit to their balance. This team is really deep. You have Crowell and Wall on the inside. A.J. Storr all over the court, plays above the rim. Max Klesman almost 20 points a game over the last 4. Chucky Hepburn setting the table. You have shooters, Blackwell, Essegian coming off the bench. The balance, the depth, and I'd also say the athleticism of Wisconsin is really impressive. Now, Anthony, Minnesota has some of those similar qualities. They don't quite have the culture established, the program established. I don't think they have the winning mindset and habits that Wisconsin has just won so many games in recent years or in the past decades. Minnesota doesn't have that established. But when I look at this matchup, another team, they're balanced, they're deep. Inside, they have probably better athletes. I mean, a lot of strength and above the rim ability on the inside. So this is an intriguing matchup tonight.
Now, Dawson Garcia, who started to play really well since coming back from injury, I wonder, does he need to be the best player on the court for Minnesota to be able to win this one?
I think he needs to be their go-to guy.
Okay.
Minnesota really struggled, Wisconsin, really struggled with Malik Reneau in their last game. A similar lefty interior player that's very versatile. Dawson Garcia is that type of player. They got to play through him. I would say the key, Anthony, though, is probably Elijah Hawkins. Did not play in their last game. We'll see if he plays tonight. But if he's a guy that can get in the paint, live in the paint, get 2 feet in the paint, And now he's got reads to his shooters on the outside. He's got the lob threat to Pharrell Payne. He's got Dawson Garcia. So if he's playing and active tonight, now Wisconsin struggled with quicker guards against Penn State. And if Hawkins can beat Chucky Hepburn off the bounce, get in the paint, now this Minnesota team is a very different team. Hawkins has struggled. Hawkins did miss the last game, but he is the engine for Minnesota. And if he's at the top of this game, it elevates them to new heights. He's
a really intriguing player in that regard, because like you mentioned, he did struggle shooting the ball a couple of games in a row before missing the last one. But sort of that floor generalship seems to be something he specializes in. Is that a part of where, Minnesota's best chance to win his game? Does it come down to even beyond Dawson Garcia? Is it about having Elijah Hawkins active and just able to actually sort of generate offense for them?
Well, he has the keys to this team. When I look at this Minnesota ball club, just across the board, their shot selection. You first go to the point guard, setting the table for everyone. They've been 15 for 69 in their 3 losses from the three-point line. So if you're shooting that poorly, it's almost 20%. It's hard to win games. I think a lot of that, though, is they have good shooters. It's shot selection. Anthony, you mentioned Dawson Garcia. They got to play inside out. It's not just him. Pharrell Payne, he's a problem. He's a man-child down there. Joshua Ola-Joseph, another big-time athlete, plays above the rim. So that's where they have to start. Can they get 2 feet in the paint? Can they get to the rim? Can they get to the free throw line? Now, if you're knocking down some shots, this could be a challenge for Wisconsin.
Now, we've sung the praises of the way that Wisconsin's operated with this season, the efficiency they've played with. In any way, has that detracted from this Greg Gard defense that we sort of think of with them over the years? Is it the same caliber of Badgers defense we've seen in the past?
I think that still remains to be seen. We'll see as they get further in this race, as they go up against the Purdue's and the Illinois and some of the stronger teams. Now, they've done well against Michigan State. That can be high-powered. They really struggled on the road at Penn State. They could not keep them out of the paint, gave up almost 90 points in that game. So despite them playing so well, so efficient offensively, I think if Wisconsin wants to challenge for the Big Ten title, wants to make a Final Four push, they're going to have that stingy Badger defense that we've known them to have.
Very curious about Max Klesmit. Just your observations of what he's been doing here over the last 6 games. Shooting, over 65% from the field, nearly 60% from 3. He's a very tenacious player on both ends of the court, but he's kind of become instant offense for him lately.
It's almost like Brad Davidson is back in a Badger uniform with how Klesmit is playing. Can be a little bit of an agitator, but his confidence in recent weeks, that's given them another element. Because you know about A.J. Storr, you know about the inside guys in Wall and Crowd, but if they can have another player step out, he had a big game against Marquette in that win, and then struggled, was pretty quiet for several weeks. Now recently, his confidence, his assertiveness, he's attacking the basket, he's knocking down shots. I mean, Blackwell's playing well, but Klesmit, he doesn't have to give him 20 every night, but if he can be a double-figure scorer, maybe around 13, 14 a game, that's just another weapon in this balanced team.
Let's move on to the game between the Buckeyes and the Huskers. It's going to be at the PBA tonight. And Ohio State, they're going to have their hands full as well. And what stands out to me from Nebraska's perspective is that on Saturday, there was an opportunity for them to maybe blow a late lead against Northwestern, and they didn't. They found a way late. Of course, Keisei Tominaga hits a big shot. I'm wondering if that type of result is the type of thing that can now catapult them, because they're not accustomed to actually being in the thick of doing something significant in conference play.
Well, I talked about Minnesota, establishing winning habits and culture. I think Nebraska's still searching for that as well. Under Fred Hoiberg, they have not had quite the success, and now they have a team that's very capable, that can make the NCAA tournament, that could make a run, that's, really, their game against Purdue was the most impressive game I've seen, 40-minute game of any team in any conference this year. And now to get a win where you don't play quite as beautifully, but you can find a way to win down the stretch. That's what Nebraska needed. They got it. Now they can they continue? They need this one at home. They've struggled on the road, but can they get this one at home? 2 very different styles of play, and so it'll be interesting to see how that plays out tonight.
And that Purdue game, part of what was so impressive was the way they defended. And we've seen that this season more than in years past with Fred Hoiberg since he's been in Lincoln. This is a Nebraska team capable of high-level defense, but then after that Purdue upset, a couple of games in a row where they're giving up around 90 points per game. Do you feel like Nebraska is now showing they can get back to the point of being a really dogged defensive team game in and game out?
I would say that's crucial for them because offensively, this is a great team. They share the wealth as well as anybody in the country. They shoot almost half their shots are threes. They got a lot of three-point shooters. They spread the ball around, but they got to be sound, solid, stingy on the defensive end. And it'll be interesting tonight because Ohio State, ball screen dominant offense. Bruce Thornton at the point guard position really can control the game. Roddy Gale's explosive. You know, you have Jamison Battle. So defending those guards, that big win against Purdue is about selling out on Zach Edey. Now it'll be, do they have a similar approach to ball screens? Do they really get aggressive like they, with Edey in the post? Now do they do that on the perimeter? That'll be interesting to see. How do they defend ball screens? That's always crucial against Ohio State. But, Anthony, you got it. For Nebraska, if they can win on the defensive end, you know they can score the ball. This is a really tough team.
Josiah Allick, if he does, have to fill in tonight. We're still waiting to see exactly what's going to happen with Juwan Gary. But his role against the Buckeyes, where Ohio State has taken a bit more of a concerted approach to operating on the interior, maybe shooting a bit less from the three-point arc, are we maybe going to see another game where Josiah Allick has to really have a big effort?
Crucial for them. 15 points against Northwestern. That was huge. And similar, he's going up against maybe Evan Mahaffey, 16 points in their win. So these are two guys that typically don't score the ball that well, and that's what coaches, teams are looking for. At this point in the season, who's going to step up? Those are the difference makers in these types of games. Now you have two guys that are more of utility guys, energy guys, giving them some production on the offensive end. That's crucial. But then in the interior, going up against Ohio State, those bigs aren't as big of scorers as their guards are, but Akpara as a lob threat, offensive rebounder. Zed Key's going to post low, so Nebraska will have to be sound on the interior as well.
How do you see the approach that Chris Holtmann takes offensively going into this game, where they have moved away from the three? Jamison Battle can shoot it. Not sure anyone else is really worthy of trust as of yet, but how do you think their approach ends up being shaped against the Huskers?
Shot selection, flow of the game, managing the game is so important. And I think for Ohio State to play inside out, they really dominated the interior points in the paint and the boards against Penn State in their most recent win. That's got to be their approach. Those guards, can I get 2 feet in the paint if I'm Bruce Thornton? Doesn't mean I have to get the shot myself, but if you get in the paint, now you have options. Now you have that lob threat to Akpara. Now you have Battle for three. Now you have Bonner off the bench maybe hitting some threes. Roddy Gale slashing to the basket. But the focal point for those guards, again, getting 2 feet in the paint. Once they get there, it's problems for the defense.
No doubt about that. And the Wolverines will face the Boilermakers. We'll get into that game a little bit later in the show today. Let's check out today's big stat, and it is specific to the all-time wins leader in Iowa men's basketball history. That is Fran McCaffery, a 78-40 record since 2020. That's the third most wins by any Big Ten team in that span, and he has appeared in 7 of the last 9 NCAA tournaments. He's got 4 consensus All-Americans throughout that time. And, of course, the 2022 Big Ten tournament title. So makes sense to have Coach Fran McCaffery be our big interview that we will discuss today. And we really appreciate Fran McCaffery being with us right now. And, Coach, the way that things have gone for your squad this season, we'll get to that in a moment, but it's a special week, a significant week, as everyone tries to honor Coaches versus Cancer. And the Suits and Sneakers Week is something that's been near and dear to your heart. Give us a little bit of a sense for the way that cancer, as we know the story of your son Patrick and others around your family, the way cancer has impacted you and why this week has become so special for you.
Well, it's been special for me for quite some time, going back to when I got involved with Coaches versus Cancer. Lost both my parents to cancer. So going back to my days at UNC Greensboro, I was involved with the Coaches versus Cancer program. As you know, it is the charity of choice for the National Association of Basketball Coaches. So all of us are, obviously very diligent in using our platform to try to fight this disease and join the cause any way we can. When it affected us in 2014 with our son Patrick, obviously it hits home a little bit more. And we had become really involved on a local level, but also on a national level. I'm on the National Council for Coaches versus Cancer. My wife just completed a 6-year time period on the American Cancer National Board. She'll now go on the ACS CAN board. So we are really joined in trying to do whatever we can to raise money for the Holden Comprehensive Cancer Center right here on campus, whether it's playing in Lon Kruger's golf outing in Las Vegas or the National Coaches versus Cancer event. We do a Coaches versus Cancer golf outing in state. We do a Coaches versus Cancer gala in the spring. We have our own gala at our home for AYA, which is the Adolescent and Young Adult Cancer Program here at the University of Iowa Hospitals and Clinics. So it's been really incredible for me to have the opportunity to join so many coaches. So many of us go out to Lon's event. We bring big groups, and I've done B Foundation events with Dick Vitale every year, and it's just amazing to watch all of us join together in this one fight. And we are clearly making a difference. This week, obviously, is Suits and Sneakers Week. We started this many years ago, but I think we've done a better job recently of trying to monetize this week in a different way. I mean, in the beginning, it was create awareness. Okay, why are the coaches wearing sneakers? Well, now we wear sneakers all the time, and wear quarter zips. But we're actually going to go back to wearing suits and sneakers for this week to create awareness and obviously, hopefully, raise some funds.
Really glad you mentioned the AYA there as well. Your son Patrick was in some ways, kind of a unique age at 14. He was too old for the pediatric cancer program and still a bit too young in some ways for some of the adult programs in place there. So that adolescent and young adult cancer program that you and your wife have been really entrenched in, it's really done a lot of great work for a lot of folks. So thanks for your efforts there.
It's interesting because what was happening is cancer patients in that age range were not having the same outcomes. And so we were the second hospital in the Midwest to start an AYA program. So we got involved right away. And so far, I've raised well over $1 million. I'm going to present a check for $130,000 at a game coming up this week. So you're absolutely right. And the Journey just did an incredible special on Patrick and his friend Austin Schrader. Austin passed at age 15. And we're hoping that, and his family has done tremendous work in raising money in his memory. So hopefully other families will not have to go through what the Schrader family went through.
A really special story being told there, like you mentioned, by the Journey, Bill Friedman and his team, showing the Flash tattoo on Patrick's chest and everything else. Really cool just to get a little bit more depth on that aspect. Coach, I know it's been a little over a week at this point, but I'd love to give folks the opportunity to hear from you on the milestone that you achieved last week, surpassing Dr. Tom Davis as the all-time wins leader in Hawkeye men's basketball history. It was obviously a very special moment for you to be able to do that. What did that mean for you to be able to claim a number one spot over a guy you revere as much as you do Dr. Tom Davis?
It was a tremendous feeling. You think about so many things, the journey itself, just reflecting on that, getting a call on a Sunday morning and having to wake our children up and tell them, hey, we're moving halfway across the country and taking a new job. They leave their friends, their school, their teams. And then, of course, having the opportunity to coach both Connor and Patrick and have Connor on the team essentially for 6 years. And he was involved in 111 of those wins. We won the Big Ten championship celebrating on the court together with them. But, it's the support that I've gotten from my wife, Margaret, and all of our family. But then you think back on the staff members that we've had, the players that hung in there with us in the beginning. I had to convince Devin Marble and Zach McCabe and Melson Basabi in those early years, Bryce Cartwright to come with us. And then, it was Woodbury, Gasell, and Clemens, and Olashaney, and White. You just think about all the players that I've been so fortunate enough to coach. And then, to watch the Murray twins as fourth graders and watch them get drafted in the first round. What a great feeling that was. And, I saw a big kid at age 14 or 15 and said, I think that kid's going to be pretty good. Next thing you know, Luka Garza is a National Player of the Year. And that's what it's about. I mean, you get it. That's, I think, the fun of it. Yeah, it's challenging. Yes, there are ups and downs and there are tough times. But, when you have an opportunity to reflect and look back, but then also, recognize one of the best to ever do it, and Dr. Tom Davis, somebody that I've gotten to know really well over the years, not just since I got here, but I've known him a long time and always respected him and how he did it. And so he's been incredibly gracious. You know, he came on a radio show the other night and he sent me a really nice note. But he's been a good friend and somebody that I just have the utmost respect for. Like I said, not only what he did, but how he did it. And we'll continue to try to do it that way.
14 seasons in, at this point, you've had, the opportunity to shape so many lives and to teach the sport that you love to so many folks over the years. What's been the most gratifying aspect of the way that you've operated with Hawkeye basketball over the years?
Well, it's essentially what you just said. That's the relationship side, and watching our guys graduate and watching them go out into the world, and whether they keep playing or they go into business or they become teachers or whatever they decide to do, staying connected with them and having been a part of helping them grow and kind of find their way, initially helping them become the best basketball player they can be. But there's so much more to it when you're an athlete at this level. And there's so much more that they deal with than when I was playing, with the social media side of it. But, every day we get to play this game that we love with our teammates and travel around the country and play on television and, overcome adversity and stay together and understand what teamwork and hard work is. And that obviously will basically pave the way for what you end up becoming and who you are. And I just, I'm so thankful. There was a video presentation that was given to me by my wife and the folks here of all of our players, congratulating me in their own way, for those 14 years that you referenced. And that was really emotional for me, and seeing guys now that are, a decade out and out in the real world, married with children and just enjoying their life because of, some of the great things they had the opportunity to do here. And they all remain connected to this program and to our institution.
Now, with this year's squad, Fran, there's no Luka Garza, there's no Chris or Keegan Murray. I'm wondering, is the burden of production for this year's version of Hawkeye men's basketball, is it more evenly distributed than squads you've had in recent years?
No question, and it's probably one of the deeper teams we've had. We've had some deep teams. We've had some teams that weren't deep, and I rode the first 5 or 6 guys, 36 minutes plus. This group, as we came into the season, obviously I was looking at Tony Perkins and Peyton Sanford and Patrick McCaffery, our 3 veteran guys, but also Ben Crickey, a veteran guy who we got out of the portal. So he's not a returner, but he's new, but he's also a guy who led the Valley in scoring. And we knew we were going to have to count on some freshmen. I'm thrilled for Owen Freeman, Rookie of the Week 6 times. But our other freshmen have all done well, as has our sophomore class, Josh Dixon, DeSante Bowen. But, Harding, Lodgy, and Bryce Sanford have been terrific. So, we've been able to, absorb some injuries. Patrick's had the bad sprained ankle. We've had some issues with, obviously, Owen Freeman's grandmother just passed, and he's not been at practice, so he should be back for tomorrow's game. But, that's why, we have Evan Braun's, another guy we got out of the portal, who's a local guy who was a veteran player, and we're excited to have him in the lineup to have an opportunity. So you're 100% right. I think we've had more than 5 guys get 20 points in a game this year, so it's pretty amazing.
To have Owen Freeman, Tony Perkins, you've had guys dealing with off-the-court loss and some family tragedy at times this season. So it just adds to what everyone, sort of has to navigate throughout a really difficult basketball season with all the competition that you guys face. Your competition on the court will commence tomorrow night against Maryland. With the Terrapins, you're coming off the performance against Purdue, so obviously you want to make sure your team is prepared to have a big performance there. What challenges do Kevin Willard's squad end up presenting to you?
Well, Kevin's always going to challenge you. I mean, I've been coaching against him, I think, since 2007 when we were in the league together in the MAC. He was at Iona. I was at Siena. I have the utmost respect for him and the job he does. You know, you look at that team and say, well, you know, it kind of starts with Young, right? He's had 30 points the last 4 road games. But, you know, Scott is one of the more veteran guys, if not the most veteran guy in our league, really good player. Reese is playing at a very high level. But, you know, the other guys, you know, Geronimo and you know, a lot of their freshmen are fiercely competitive, really play defense. They challenge you. Of course, Kevin's going to change defenses. That challenges your offense. But they got guys that can score. They have guys that can defend. They're going to put heat on the basketball. You know, we both like to run. So it should be an exciting game. You know, obviously, we'll have our guys prepared with a scouting report. But as you know, in this league, every time you take the floor, you know, the team has a great coach and great players, and you have to play well, and you have to play well consistently.
Well, you mentioned excitement, certainly an exciting day in Iowa City. I know you'll be out there later in the day when Beth Getz is officially announced as the new full-time athletic director for the Hawkeyes. As always, really appreciate your time, Fran. Thanks so much.
Always my pleasure. Take care.
A lot still to get into with the number 2 team in the country. That is, of course, the Purdue Boilermakers and Anthony Herron, and now Trent Meacham back in here with me as well. And Trent, with the way that Purdue has been performing this season, it's always fun to talk about them. They're going to host Michigan. We mentioned the difficulties of teams winning on the road in Big Ten play. With the way Zach Edey's been playing as of late, I think it would be difficult for an NBA team to go into Mackey and win them at this point. What have been your observations on the way that he individually has even responded since they had that upset loss to the Huskers?
Yeah, Nebraska really sold out on him and didn't have quite the normal game that he does and his normal dominance. He's gone for over 30 points and 10-plus rebounds in those 3 successive games. So he has been the best player in the country. I think I almost take him for granted how good he is, how dominant he is, and defensively, how much space he takes up, how challenging it is for opponents to get to the basket, to finish around the hoop. Now, so he's just been phenomenal. I think they have a cast of characters that have really found their role, are confident in their role. I love how Lance Jones is playing. He's been in double figures in 6 straight games, 17 points at Iowa, really hit the clinching shot to put that game away. So this team is so dominant now. Michigan, going on the road, as good as Zach Edey is, I think you got to attack him in ball screens. You got to attack him on the inside. Terrace Reed has shown some things. So feed Reed, see if he can get him into foul trouble. Michigan's shot the ball pretty well. They don't have their point guard in Doug McDaniel, but they're going to have to shoot the heck out of the ball to have a chance.
Yeah, it's a very different squad with no Doug McDaniel for any of the road games. And Wednesday, the Terps will square off with the Hawkeyes, as we just discussed with Frank McCaffery. Then the 10th-ranked Fighting Illini take on the Wildcats. Don't miss a Hoops doubleheader. Wednesday only on the Big Ten Network and the Fox Sports app. Coverage begins with the tip-off show at 6:30 Eastern. With the teams that we do, you know, we haven't necessarily referenced some of them as of yet. Let's get into some of these other squads who still have a lot of work to do in the Big Ten, and teams who, you know, we're trying to determine which direction they're trending here. Do you want to start with the Fighting Illini?
This team is really intriguing. I think they have Final Four potential. In the last 7 games, and Terrence Shannon goes out, Marcus Damask, almost 20 points, 5 rebounds, 5 assists. He's played like an All-American. Now they have their All-American and TSJ back. He looked pretty good in that first game on Sunday. So this team, these other, you know, the role players have all emerged. Now, it's not just Damask. It's Justin Harmon, 18 points in that game. Quincy Guerrier, Coleman Hawkins, Luke Goody. This is a really complete team. And they're a different team. The size that they throw at you, how they can get to the basket, so athletic, so good on both ends of the floor. And because of their different style of play, and then you have that guy like Terrence Shannon back, you see how they all integrate with him back now. It looked pretty good again in 1 game sample. This team has the makings of a team that can make a push and challenge Purdue, Wisconsin in this Big Ten race, and also a deep run in March.
I mean, he missed a few shots early, and then down the stretch, it just looked like they didn't miss a beat. Terrence Shannon Jr. was just right back there playing at his All-American caliber. Now, Northwestern is a squad that we saw them ranked briefly for a point earlier in the season, and you know, we know the ceiling may be relatively high, while at the same time, they do have to play near their peak, and Boo Buie had an off-shooting night over the weekend. It's a little bit out of the ordinary for Boo Buie. What stands out to you about the direction the Wildcats are trending?
Well, I love how Brooks Barnhizer has been playing recently, almost 18 points a game in his last 5. You know, they have this great backcourt in Bowie, in Langborg, in Barry that can spread the floor and knock down shots. And now you have your 4-man who's shooting the ball well. He's their best rebounder on the team, very versatile player. So now if you have 4 guys, Anthony, that can handle the ball, that can make plays, that can make shots, not many teams have that. So I love Northwestern in close games down the stretch. They have the players, obviously a closer in Boo Buie, but they have a number of guys around him that can make shots, experienced guard play. I like them, especially in close games.
And we've seen the Michigan State Spartans play a few close games, and we know how well Tom Izzo tends to manage those. There's an interesting combination of depth, experience, and youth that now feels like, to me, it's beginning to blend in East Lansing.
And I'm just, I'm biased towards Tom Izzo and how he gets his team going. I'm biased for great guard play. They have a number of good guards. I think Tyson Walker is underappreciated, one of the best in the country. Malik Hall's been consistent lately. Trey Holloman knocking down shots. They really struggled shooting the ball early this season. Yeah. And now that's picked up. They're up at the high 30% rate from the three-point line. If they continue shooting the ball well, which I expect them to, they get out in transition, I would not bet against the Spartans as we get here into February.
When Holloman goes, they're undefeated. When he has 6 points or more, it's a really weird and unique kind of stat.
Not many points, yeah.
Right, 6 points or more, then they're doing pretty well with that this season. Also, the Maryland Terrapins. Let's finish there with the folks in College Park where, it feels like they're a team who, when they play at a certain pace in a certain way, they can beat anyone. But we have seen that they're not the same team on the road as they are at home.
Well, Anthony, I did see them on the road in Champaign, went to that game with my family, and got one of the best road wins of the season. Jameer Young has been as good as any guard in the country in recent weeks. And here's the deal. When you have a strong defensive team like they have, individually, good athletes, good size across the board, and then you have a point guard that can control the game. When he's knocking down shots, he can go for 30 any night. That's a recipe for upsets. That's a recipe for disrupting any opponent. And they, Julian Reese is obviously talented on the inside. When Dante Scott, when he's rolling, when he's getting around 15 points a game, this team is very tough. But they struggle shooting the ball. But if they can knock down some shots, play through their point guard, again, another tough Big Ten team, and if they can get some more wins on the road, they could creep up there into the top 4 or 5 teams.
One of those teams right there in the middle of the conference. It just seems like they have the potential to do more, and we'll just see whether it's the home or road splits, if Maryland ends up being one of these squads that can maybe not threaten for the championship, but certainly be right there, try to make sure they can solidify that 2nd or 3rd spot. We're going to transition a bit, stay on the hardwood, but go to the women's game where a big upset over the weekend where Ohio State took down Iowa now reshapes not only their hopes, but the hopes of other teams around the league. We'll talk to Autumn Johnson next. There's your Naismith National Player of the Week, Cody McMahon from the Ohio State University Buckeyes. And you understand why she won that award. Big upset victory on the home court for the Buckeyes. Cody McMahon led them to that with 33 points. The Hawkeyes could do absolutely nothing with her in the post. So, off their big win, plenty to discuss at the top of the ledger in Big Ten women's basketball, and who better for us to have that conversation with than Autumn Johnson of NCAA.com and also one of our analysts here at the Big Ten Network. Autumn, let's go ahead and start there with the result from Columbus. And in what way do you think that ends up maybe reshaping the championship chase in the Big Ten Conference?
I think you need to put Ohio State high on your radar and definitely at the top of that conversation. I think we got a little bit away from that because they have hit some bumps in the road, but this is a team we knew they could be. Coming off an Elite 8 run, adding Celeste Taylor to already a deep squad, but I was very impressed of how they were able to take down Iowa, the number 2 team in the country at the time. And it all took everyone in that matchup, but Cody McMahon having the game that she was due for. She was due for this breakout game in her sophomore year. She told me personally that she was going through a slump and she was a little discouraged, but this was a big game and she couldn't be in her feelings. She powered her way through that Iowa zone. They played a little bit of man-to-man too, but that middle of the floor was wide open and she was able to get her spin move off and make her power moves, make the right reads. It's going to take everyone and more, and we saw just a little bit of everyone step up. But if you don't have Ohio State in your conversation when you're talking about Big Ten championships, you better think again, and they showed that in this matchup.
I was struck on him by the way Ohio State shot the basketball as well. It almost seemed like that caught Iowa off guard a bit with the way they were able to hit three-pointers in that one. If that's sustained, then does that maybe make Ohio State one of the more versatile teams when you have McMahon on the inside and then that ability to shoot from the perimeter with their pace?
100%. And just look at Rebecca Mikolashikova. She hit a massive three down the stretch that gave them that edge. This is a team that can have your 5, your 4, pull it out and stretch the floor. JC Sheldon, too. She's a vet and a two-way player in this game. She can hit three and take you off the dribble. Just a little bit of everyone doing that. Celeste Taylor, too, even though she was in foul trouble. You have different weapons that can do different things at any point in the game. And the fact that all of them clicked at the same time was dangerous.
And from Iowa's perspective, Autumn, where you had another fantastic performance from Caitlin Clark, Kevin McGuff was talking about it after the game, just had everyone wowed with her efforts there on national television. Well, at the same time, Hannah Stuelke wasn't, quite as efficient as, we've seen at times this season. Kate Martin, a lot of players got in some foul trouble throughout that one. The sort of 1A, 1B, the number 2 player for the Hawkeyes, is there someone that needs to be more consistent in that regard for Iowa to sustain their number 1 position?
Yeah, even though, Caitlin Clark hit 45 points and, they lost that game and you want to have your supporting cast step up a little bit, I don't think this loss defines this team. They still have another opportunity at Ohio State in their last regular game at home, which will be very exciting. But yeah, you mentioned that 1A, 1B. I think it still needs to be that Hannah Stuelke that steps up consistently. The major question was, who's going to step up in place of Monica Sonano and McKenna Warnock in the front court. Hannah Stuelke still has been doing just that. Her growth and her skill set from year 1 to now year 2, she's such a vital piece to this offense and the way Iowa likes to play. They like to push pace. She's sometimes even beating guards down the floor. And I would even say Molly Davis, too. She's been giving them great minutes. And she had 18 points in that Indiana game. More of that, more of Kate Martin. If you can have that supporting cast step up on a consistent basis, I think that this is going to be a complete unit. They already showcased that already this season, especially versus that Indiana team, and also put up great defensive efforts, too. But both ends of the floor, Iowa can be very dangerous outside of Caitlin Clark.
Lisa Bluter was recently telling me over on Big Ten Radio just how much she likes the depth of this squad, even more so than maybe what she's had access to in years past. Gabby Marshall now hitting from 3. So there's a lot for Hawkeye fans to, of course, still be very, very eager to watch as the regular season plays out here. You mentioned the Hoosiers, though. Indiana, they had a difficult game against the Hawkeyes. Iowa ended up dominating Indiana in a way that I didn't really anticipate as they sort of ran away with that one. What do you think Indiana does moving forward here? How do they respond off of that one disappointment to make sure that they're still going to be in the championship chase?
They still have another chance at Iowa later on in February, so I can't wait to see how that matchup goes down. But, keep doing what they're doing. Mackenzie Holmes is going to be their consistent factor inside. She's so great when it comes to her footwork, her IQ, her poise. She's unstoppable. But the difference maker for this team has been the ability for Sarah Scalia and Sydney Parrish to stretch the floor and hit that 3. Sarah Scalia has been a consistent 3-point shooter in the Big Ten. Sydney Parrish as well. She's been able to step up a lot. She at one point had 11 threes in one game, but if she can continue to have that play and stretch the floor and be efficient for this team, this is a squad that is very disciplined, very balanced. They're connected. They're defensive minded. I feel like they're going to finish possibly top 2, top 3 in this conference, and they might even surprise us and take it all the way in the Big Ten championship game. I feel like this is a very deep Big Ten conference, and it could be anyone's game at anyone's moment. Just in that one, it was Iowa's, but they'll have another chance at it.
We've certainly seen the way the Hoosiers have started flourishing here in recent seasons. And, they, after winning the regular season championship last year, I think a lot of folks recognize what they're capable of. Is there a team this season that's maybe been a surprise for you in a positive way that you think maybe came from a bit off the radar that now are having a great year?
Minnesota. My answer originally was going to be Michigan State, but Minnesota how they've come in as this young sophomore-led squad. I mean, they have 11 out of 13 underclassmen on their team. They have a sophomore backcourt. And last year, you know, they were out of the conversation for the most part, only winning 4 conference games, 11-19 overall. But this year, 14-4 overall and 4-3 in conference play. They're already matching their wins from last season and surpassing that. Their only losses this season comes to UConn, who I thought had a solid game versus them, Iowa, Indiana, and nearly knocked off Maryland. They stayed close in that matchup, but the way they've been able to do it is with their defense. They're top 2 right now. They turn teams over at a high rate. They have an elite, prolific scorer in Mara Braun. She's going to be a star. She is a star. And she's been everything and more for this team. And the fact that other players like a Grace Grochelski, who's a freshman, and Mallory Heyer, they're lighting it up beyond the arc. They are a 3-point shooting team, one of the top in the conference. And I feel like last year they kind of like laid down that foundation. And now this year they're meshing together as a group, as a unit with experience and now confidence.
A really young squad and a great recruiting class last year that's starting to get a little more seasoning on them. You can tell they're going to be a threat down the stretch here. Is there a player or players that when we start to look at in the thick of the conference schedule here, all Big Ten, and who's going to have some of those postseason accolades? Is there maybe a fringe player beyond some of the obvious ones we view at the top, the Caitlin Clarks and Mackenzie Holmes of the world, but who's one of those fringe players that you see that will have an opportunity for some all Big Ten acclaim?
Oh, yeah. I mean, of course, Caitlin Clark, doing Caitlin Clark things. She's going to be on that list. You mentioned Mackenzie Holmes, consistently up there with her as well. J.C. Sheldon, Amara Braun, as I mentioned, even Alexis Markowski, who's doing well on both ends, I would say, you know, putting up points for this team, but also grabbing tons of rebounds for this team. But I feel like this is a very guard-heavy league, and everyone has been shining in their own regards. Based off how they finished and their teams finished, I would throw Cheyenne Sellers in that conversation as well. Amora Joyner for Michigan State, who's been doing everything and more for this team. And Alayla Filia, who's a 2-way player. Just these 3 players were going to be my top 3 to look at as we go down the stretch in Big Ten conference play. That should be considered for these type of awards for the impact that they have done for their team this season in hopes of taking them a far away and hopefully deep into conference play.
Outstanding. Can't wait to watch it. Thanks a lot for your time, Autumn.
Thank you for having me.
And a happy belated birthday to Caitlin Clark as well, whose birthday it was just earlier this week. Some more tidings for other players on the Big Ten hardwood on the men's side of things. Who are some players who deserve a little more pub than they've been getting? Tonight, got your pair of Boulder battles on the hardwood. First, AJ Storr leads the Badgers against Dawson Garcia and the Gophers. Then, the women's team square off in Madison. It's all tonight, only on the Big Ten Network and the Fox Sports app. We've just got a little bit of time to go with you here, and we did want to make sure we are shining a bit of a light on some of the other players, especially those who will have key roles in what's going to happen this week and getting up to this point in the season, Trent Meacham, players who maybe have really done some things that are impactful that getting a little bit less shine than some of their counterparts. How about we start in Lincoln?
Yeah, these guys are not at the top of the scouting report. They're not the first guys we talk about on this show here at the Big Ten Network. But I look at Bryce Williams, 6'7", 215 pounds. He does so many things for the Huskers on both ends of the floor. That win against Purdue had 9 points, 11 rebounds, 9 assists, 2 blocks, 2 steals. That's just a picture of what he does. Is a big guard, can get to the free throw line, can rise up, shoot over opponents, has a 3-ball going as well. So a guy that's very versatile for Fred Hoiberg, and that they can use him in so many different ways on both ends of the ball.
Now, Nebraska not ranked right now, but certainly a team with postseason aspirations if Bryce Williams can really continue to be the impactful player that he's been. One of the top teams in the country, though, throughout this season has been the Illini. They've got a player you believe has gotten a little bit less pub as well.
Oh, Quincy Guerrier, 6'8", 220. What I love about him is he doesn't need the ball to be effective. He's going to go get it. He'll go get it off the offensive glass. He's a terrific cutter off the ball. He spaces the floor. And maybe the best closeout driver that we have in the Big Ten Conference. Finishes above the rim, almost 12 points, 8 rebounds a game. I think Quincy Guerrier is a next-level player.
Okay, like the sounds of that. I'm sure Quincy does also. Also mentioned another ranked team here in the Big Ten with a player in Madtown that really deserves a bit more shine.
Steven Crowell. Okay, there's so much talk about Storr and these guys, rightfully so, but Steven Crowell, 12 points, nearly 10 rebounds a game, shooting it almost 60% from the field, over 50% from three, incredibly efficient, can dish the ball as well, 2.5 assists a game. So this is a guy, they use him on the outside. He can spread the floor. They'll post him up. Defensively, he's an anchor for them. He is a crucial point for the Badgers.
One quick question following up with Crowell. I remember when Frank Kaminsky was there, and they almost had him as a point forward in the post, kind of running the offense through him. Does Crowell have that level of game? Could you see Greg Gard using him in that way?
He's not quite at Kaminsky's level yet, but that's how the Badgers use their bigs. They'll put their guards in the post. They'll move their bigs on the outside. Steven Crowell, we've seen him evolve. I love how his game has progressed in his time in Madison.
Man, it is going to be a conference slate. Right now, obviously, Purdue at the top of the heap, but the depth of some of these teams, especially now that we're in the conference play, showing up so much more. Trent, thank you so much for your time. Our thanks as well to Autumn Johnson and Fran McCaffery for joining us. Just make sure you keep it locked right here to Big Ten Today. So much coming on the way tomorrow. We'll see the two of us.